Welcome, everybody. We're excited to chat with you a little bit more about the new frontier of technology and education with AI. But I'm going to do like we do at the Yass Prize, and we're going to talk about some hard stuff. So, how many of you feel a little uncomfortable? Okay, that's okay. You don't have to rate. Okay, we got some people raising their hands. Not everybody, but as somebody that was awarded in the 2021 year for our work within a public school district, I understand the seats that you're sitting in, where you're like, wait a minute, I represent a public school, I'm here, I won because we're doing transformative work. What is this all about? And just so you know, like, this is the type of discourse that we have that continue to challenge our ideas and push us to the next level. But you're here for a reason, because not all of us are sitting in your space every day, and so we get an opportunity to learn from you as much as you get to learn from us about the things that we do. So with that said, I'm excited because I love the idea of the telegraph education taught to the TikTok generation, because I believe the best educational technology products are going to be built by the next generation, and that's who we have here. So we've got an esteemed panelist of Forbes 30 Under 30 awardees in education. So can we give a big round of applause for their work? All right, so let's start off with some introductions. To my immediate left, we have Edna Martinson, co-founder of Boddle Learning, a gaming platform for education using gameplay and machine learning to help elementary students tackle learning gaps and build their confidence to learn. So Edna, what made you start Boddle? What made you get into gamified education? I believe it was 2019 or 2018 when you left your job in order to do this work. Do you mind sharing with the audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. And I just want to start off by saying thank you all for the work that you're doing. It's incredible. It's important. It's just inspiring to hear the first two panels, and just to be in a room with folks who like really truly care about, you know, kids getting high quality education and learning resources. So thank you so much. So my name is Edna Martinson. I am originally from Ghana, West Africa. I came to the US at 16 for college. I was fortunate enough back in Ghana, I had a lot of, you know, tutors and support academically that allowed me to come to the US early, start my college degree early, and have always been passionate about education and the doors that education can open up for the next generation, because I've seen what it's done for myself. And in 2018, my co-founder, who is also my husband, we both really fell in love with that intersection of gaming and education. And his background is in game design. He's done it for over a decade plus. And we had a lot of teacher friends who, you know, were in classrooms, the panel before us kind of spoke on this, where, you know, kids are in third grade, but really on a first grade or second grade math and reading level. We had teacher friends who were just really stressed, saying, you know, I have 25 plus kids in a class. They've come to me all not on grade level. I'm supposed to like catch them back up. And we saw this opportunity to use something that we know kids love, which is games, and implement the right learning tools on top of that to help them, you know, identify these learning gaps. And it's not only for the kids who are behind, but for the kids who are on grade level and ahead to have something more challenging as well. So that was the genesis of Boddle. We launched in 2020 and now serving over 6 million kids around the country.
So amazing. All right, in the middle here we have Lisa Wang, the founder of Almost Fun, an edtech nonprofit helping students overcome math anxiety and improve their math outcomes through accessible and relevant digital resources. Lisa, tell us how you got started.
Yeah, so I think that my math journey starts with my parents, actually. Both my parents came to the US from rural China, where they really didn't have access to many resources at all. My dad, to like make me feel appreciative for what I have, used to always tell me this story about how he figured out that he had some talent in math because he knew when his textbooks were wrong, even when his teachers didn't. And so for me, math has always been something where I felt like it changed my dad's life, it changed my life. But as a kid, I really struggled with math. It wasn't something that I liked doing. I used to get those timed worksheets in class and get really stressed out. I felt like I had no natural talent in it, and it created a lot of anxiety for me. But I was really lucky that I had my dad because he has this love for math. He taught me with analogies, with context that I'd experienced earlier in the day, and made me feel connected to math. And that developed into a love. And so I ended up majoring in math in college, and it's something that, is a big part of my life. When I started to teach students and work with students in the math classroom, I started to see so many versions of me where math just felt like this terrible, terrible subject that you don't want to be learning, you don't want to be in the classroom. I had kids coming to the class and just putting their heads on their desk because they didn't want to engage and they were too stressed out by it. And I wanted to try a new approach. And so I focused on using analogies similar to what my dad did for me, and context and visualizations and things that would help my students connect to the math. I remember we went from using word problems about renting luxury golf carts, which no student can really relate to ones that were actually related to their lives, like how much storage do I have on my phone and can I download this new app? And that made all the difference. So we started to digitize that content, put it online, make it free, and students kind of flocked to it, especially middle and high school students. And we now serve about 2.5 million students across the US, over 10,000 cities and towns where students are using our resources.
Amazing. All right, Curtis Carmichael is a STEAM futurist that helps schools and educational organizations prepare for the future of work. Curtis sacrificed a pro football career to cycle across Canada for a charity fundraiser, saving a local after-school program in his community from closing down, and authored Butterflies in the Trenches, which is the world's first augmented reality memoir. What inspired you, Curtis?
Yeah, y'all good, by the way? Making sure you're straight. Part of my beginning journey, my parents immigrated from South America, and we actually split our family up. So half of us settled in Toronto, Canada. Anyone been to Canada here? No one. It's cold. So half my family settled in Toronto, the other half settled in Brooklyn, actually. And we used to go back and forth between the two. And what people don't know about Canada, it's very similar to Brooklyn in many ways, if you go in Toronto. So Toronto has kind of like an eastern part called Scarborough, which is where The Weeknd's from, the global icon. Essentially, Scarborough's like Brooklyn. So a lot of the dynamic you see in schools, in the streets, how it's funded, it's very similar in Canada in inner city communities. The difference here is that we're better at branding that nothing goes on. That's what Canada's really good at. So seeing that growing up, I always wanted to make a change for people in my community. And typically we talk about kids who are in schools, maybe 1 to 2 to 3 grade levels behind. I was working with the kids who weren't even in the class. So the kids who are on alternative education, kids who are in prison, kids who are still on the corner while school's in session. And I was one of those kids. So I was trying to understand, how do I not only get in school and get up to grade level, but how do I create opportunities for kids to get into STEM and STEAM pathways? Because a lot of our focus at the time was, let's just get them in school. And I wanted to make sure we're at the forefront of innovation rather than just playing catch up. So my approach is more so like, kids who aren't in school or in prisons, let's get them to start companies. Let's get them in a STEM career. So I kind of jumped the gun and ended up starting Source Code Academy. So Source Code Academy Canada, basically, we work in low communities in Canada, and what we do is we build labs in schools, public schools, and labs in communities. So the goal is they have innovation and entrepreneurship labs so they can start companies right in their neighborhood, or they can start STEM careers right in their neighborhood. So we run an interesting thing that's modeled after Timothy Smith Network in Boston. It's called Learn to Teach, Teach to Learn. So they have industry professionals mentor high school students, then high school students are employed, and they mentor middle school students, and then the middle school students mentor the elementary students. So we create this cyclic model with teachers to supplement school learning, but also in the community. And it's a very different approach. It's not as scalable as typical ventures I've done, because I come from more of a business background, but our goal was to follow kind of Audre Lorde's focus was the master's tools can never dismantle the master's house. So our goal was all our community centers and our labs are decentralized. So they're community owned and operated. So every community has their own approach on how they want to prepare for the future. And we supplement them kind of like the Geek Squad for the hood. I don't know if you know, you kind of know the vibes? Okay, we're still in this generation. Okay, so we essentially work in 1,000 schools in Canada currently that services over 2 million people within the district. So we come in as a consultant, but also we build labs in different communities as well.
Thank you. What I love about this group is I hope you see yourselves in them. What I heard is that their personal experience inspired them to do something different and to impact the next generation the same way somebody impacted them. So we're going to get into how AI shows up in your individual products or in the work that you do. But first let's talk about the past. Because educators in here, how many times have you had an ed tech company come to you and promise personalized learning or to increase engagement? And then how many times did it fail? Because of that, I know you guys are a little bit more hesitant in order to implement new products and technology. So let's go ahead and acknowledge the elephant in the room, what's worked well and what hasn't in the past. So Lisa, do you mind sharing with us what's worked well and what hasn't worked as well in the past as far as AI and educational products?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that as I was seeing the chatbots and the generative AI conversation in education, it was a little bit of deja vu to 5 to 10 years ago when tech companies were promising, like you said, personalized education. And at the end of the day, it really wasn't actually personalized. It was barely adaptive. It was like, did this student get a linear equation problem right? Okay, give them a slightly harder one or give them a slightly easier one. And there wasn't really a learning or an understanding of how much of this problem did the student get right? Maybe they got 80% of the problem right, and it's one little piece that they're still confused on, but we're giving them just the same type of problem over and over and over again. And that's not actually personalized in any way. And it just reminds me of that time where there were over promises and there was under delivery. A bunch of companies raised a bunch of money and then shut down. And I think that that's why I enter into this phase with cautious optimism. I think that the tech is a lot further than any of us knew, which is exciting. But I also think that there's a lot of hallucinations going on in generative AI. And I think that, the learnings of the past are that learning goals in the classroom need to dictate what the tech looks like and what the tech is using to model, not the other way around. And that's really important to remember as we go into this new phase.
Thank you. Curtis, tell the audience the difference between AI and generative AI.
Yeah, interesting. I'll answer it two ways. AI is meant to mimic human intelligence. It's not really good at it, though, as you can tell, with all the hallucinations, the biases. And then generative AI, you're probably familiar with it. There's a lot of tools. I'll give an education example. There's a company that is called Magic School AI right now. You select what grade you're in, and you say what your learning goal is, and then it automatically generates this lesson plan for you in seconds. So generative AI is really easy to understand. But when you think of matching in AI, it's not as easy to understand because it's not sexy. So like you're talking about is, I'll give you an example for schooling. Before the pandemic, we've heard of kids being 2 to 3 grade levels behind. I do a lot of consulting and travel around North America, in Canada and the US, and the gaps are even bigger. So I've been in middle school classes where there's some kids who are gifted, grade 12 level in some subject areas, and some kids who are grade 1 level in a middle school class. So the gaps are so wide. If AI matching was able to do what it's supposed to do, the goal would be able to outline where all the students are at grade level expectations wise and figure out what the learning goal is. And then through generative AI, it actually matches them first based on where they're at and then generates a plan that's personalized for every specific student. But that's not true personalization. That's just looking at what their grade level expectation is. We have to incorporate culturally relevant supports within AI. So focusing on a lot of student interests, lived experiences, their learning preferences. There's so many other aspects to technology that has been missed. And they're very homogenous too. A lot of the technology that came up, I think like you said, they work at the technology and then they backward design to the student. They're supposed to work at the student and backward design to the technology. So that's where I think where AI and generative AI is having a big miss right now. It's not truly revolutionary yet. And I think when we get to responsible AI, ethical AI, then we can actually build something that's actually beneficial for many students, but create a lot of different pathways. I know machine learning we talked about briefly. I'm a techie. I don't know if there's any developers in here. Any developers? Okay. A lot of the early ideas when machine learning came out was the idea of grouping students. But true personalization has to have a different path per student. So beyond machine learning, AI has a lot of promise now. Because now we're able to architect 30 different pathways within a classroom instead of 6 groupings, which isn't truly personalization of learning.
Can I just add to that in terms of the definition? I think like the best definition I've got was from AI, from ChatGPT, when I typed in like, what's the difference between like AI and machine learning? And the example given, I also typed in explain like I'm 5. And it was like, imagine you have a coloring book and AI is coloring in your circles and your sun. Machine learning is teaching the AI to say like, hey, a sun is yellow, and so then it's learning every time it sees yellow, it colors it in, and colors in other things yellow that need to be yellow. And then generative AI is you're giving it more data, and now it's not just coloring in your worksheet, it's drawing new drawings and creating other things based out of the data and input that you're giving it.
Thank you for adding that. So before we transition to talk about how AI and ML shows up in your products and how you're working to build work against bias in AI, let's talk about another elephant in the room. Will AI replace teachers? And what is the optimum state of how AI and teachers can work together to produce the best student outcome? So first question, will AI replace teachers?
No.
Good answer. There's a lot of teachers in the room.
I think that when I think about AI, it's a tool. It's something that empowers people. And at the end of the day, making decisions, logically reasoning, that's not something that AI does well or really can do. Connecting with a student. I think, if we look into healthcare, there's a lot of parallels where therapists are using AI tools to empower their work. But it's not that the AI is replacing a therapist. That would be unethical and also would not be a good experience for patients. It's that AI is, in some cases, recording what's going on in the session. It's creating summarization. It's pulling out relevant pieces of information. It's giving insights to the therapist to empower them. It's not replacing them. And I think that's a good parallel for the classroom. And I see AI as a tool that can really empower what the teacher does, give them a better understanding of a student, because it's hard to keep track of every student and where they're at, to Curtis's point. But AI can help the teacher do that and empower the teacher to work better with students.
So when we think about the teacher shortage, what you're saying is if a teacher has to be in a large classroom, then the role of AI would be to help them have equal or better student outcomes because they're able to understand and personalize the experience for each individual student.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
And really, giving them their time back to just be the facilitators and focus on, what they need to be focused on in the classroom. For example, on Sundays, our team is off, but Clarence, who's my husband, and I, we have our live chat on, and we're on call because Sundays we get so many messages from teachers that's when they plan out their lesson plans, and we're hearing from them after school and before school. I mean, everybody here knows, like, educators are, at capacity and super stressed. And so AI can really come on board and help them with a lot of the administrative stuff and, figuring out their lesson planning and grading, just to make their lives a lot easier, so they can focus on the students.
Great.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. I'm a former teacher. So I want to talk a bit more about that, add on it. Teachers work around 40 hours a week, but then they're actually planning 15 plus hours per week. So you're like, where are they getting this time? So it's either before school, so you can't do it at work. It's at lunch, because you're not teaching. And then it's after school, evenings, weekends. And in the summer, you're actually not off. So people said, oh, teachers have the best job. They're actually working over the summer doing PD. They're doing long-range planning to figure out how they want to do the next year. So I think a lot where AI has a promise is making it a lot more efficient. So getting back that 15 hours in a week can actually allow them to free up their time to be more present at their job. But also, even from an instructional coaching perspective, teachers only get instructional coaching like once every few years. And the problem with that is you're teaching 1,000 lessons at minimum per year. So you're telling me 4,000 lessons later, you have someone sitting in your room telling you how effective you were. So I think where AI could fit in is merging it with planning. So there's real-time feedback after every lesson, and there's actually insights on recommendations on skills gaps, so you can identify where students are falling between the cracks. So I think that's where AI can come in to make it efficient, but also help with instructional coaching.
Do y'all have any recommendations of AI tools that can help free up a teacher's time that are available today, even if they're not, advertised as educational products, whether it's freeing up a teacher's time or maybe an administrator that's working in education?
I can think of one right now. I'm actually working on one
Okay.
right now. But no, I think there's a dashboard on ChatGPT that has like an information session on how to prompt it to do lesson plans. But I usually caution a lot of tools right now, because all the tools, there's 3 right now that exist, but they're all built on OpenAI. And the reason I won't recommend them is not because I'm in the space. It's mostly because it's built on a platform that uses the data to train its own models. So student data and student privacy is compromised. So a lot of the new tools that are coming out right now, the best thing to look at is figure out where the models are trained first, and then figure out if it actually follows your policies at a board level to put in student data and teacher data. A lot of the biggest one I liked was Magic School AI. That was one of my favorite ones, but there's a lot of issues because it's built on GPT-3 right now. And though it's early in the prototype, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's cool, but student data can't be compromised at any stage. So I think the best tool right now would be any tool built on Cohere. It's very specific, Cohere. It's the only model right now that is truly going towards ethical AI, and a lot of companies are building it and moving from OpenAI to Cohere.
Thank you. Now let's talk about how AI and ML is showing up in your products or in your work, and how you are working against the bias and like building ethically. Whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So for us, when we were first building Boddle, an important thing for us is, one, how can we make this adaptive so that we're supporting teachers who have these large class sizes to be able to easily identify where the gaps are for the kids and have it immediately tailor learning to those specific skills. That way, the kids are getting caught up or being challenged and have stuff that's more rigorous to them, and the teachers are getting that data. And at the same time, how are we creating a platform that, gives teachers the full curriculum? We're a supplemental program, so the full math and ELA curriculum that they need to be able to target practice in their classrooms. And a big part of that is, and it's baked in our business model, is we wanted this tool to be something that's available to kids everywhere, right? And so if you're building algorithms based on data, it has to be really diverse data. And so for us, Boddle's a free platform. Teachers, parents, whether it's public school, micro schools, can all use it. And we know that the data that we're collecting is from a really diverse set. And so that way it's not, biased to say oh, Boddle is only something that's, affordable to kids in private schools, and that's all of the data set that we've collected. So our algorithms are based on a really big, diverse data set.
Thank you.
I think for us, we're really focused on machine learning within our practice questions, because to an earlier point, I think that within math especially, we don't take an asset-based approach enough. And for any given problem, students can answer it in so many different ways that highlight different levels of understanding, right? If you're asked to graph the point 3, 1, graphing it as 1, 3 is different from graphing it as 4, 5 is different from, there's just so many different ways that a student might have a misconception, and we have to handle those differently. And a lot of the platforms out there that are providing questions handle them the same. When we ask students what's one of the worst things that you experience in resources today, it's the red X. Because the red X, when you get a problem wrong, tells you not very much. It tells you that you got the problem wrong. It doesn't tell you that maybe you actually mostly got it right. And so for us, when we're looking at AI and ML, what we're trying to do is build a more thorough, complete understanding of where the student's at, so we can give them real and actionable feedback and actually encouragement. Because if you know 80% of a question, and then you realize, oh, I'm only 20% of the way from having full understanding, that's a powerful learning moment versus, oh, I got this wrong and I don't know why. And I think one thing that we're using as a guide as well is something that I recommend to anyone evaluating AI products. It's called the EdTech Equity Project. And they have a questionnaire of different things that you should be thinking about when you're building, when you're buying AI, questions that you can ask, because it is a big part of it is the data that's being used, but it's also how those models are being created. What are they using as success metrics? What did they say is a positive learning outcome? Because it might be different from what you as a school or as a teacher or as a community think is a positive learning outcome. And if those aren't aligned, it really is this magical box that's doing things that this is impacting the student that you have very little control over. So that's a guideline that we're working on using, and it's one that I recommend for sure.
Thank you. Curtis?
Yeah, another guideline I'll mention, I have to check that one out. I've been following a lot of Algorithmic Justice League. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Dr. Joy's work, but a lot of it covers unmasking AI, so looking at the bias behind AI. So they provide a lot of frameworks KPIs to see what kind of data sets you're using, what to abide by, what to follow. So we've been following a lot of that in our work, and we're pretty early. So in our space, because we work directly with young people, we've been building our own AI models in-house just to show young people how to build models that are ethical. So that research kind of snowballed this last few weeks. So we actually built an internal product called Shuri. It's actually named after Shuri from Black Panther. And the goal was to create a culturally responsive assistant that actually helps teachers. So we actually built something in-house to help our teachers in our network. And what we found just within house is we're able to replace their time. So they got 15 hours back per week, but then they also get insights to the skills gaps that they had. So we were able to provide personalized professional development for teachers based on what was happening in the classroom. So we thought it was really cool to be able to do that, but it took a while because we saw OpenAI, and then we're like, we're just not going to release anything until we learn about something else. So we're able to release that, and we're going to make it more public as of late. But the data set was the biggest reason why we took so long to release anything. We wanted to make sure the guardrails are behind the data.
Thank you. What I love about the Yass Prize in this panel is that this is the great equalizer, right? As an education technology company that's developing products, whether you're structured as a for-profit or nonprofit or other, you're distributing your products throughout the continuum. So I would love for our final question for you each to talk about what does the future of learning look like with AI? And I want to call out that when we had our pre-huddle, you all mentioned a lot of ways that people are not even thinking about using AI that could lead to how we support different diverse learners and special populations. So if you all don't mind giving us a prediction on the future of AI and ways that we're not thinking about that it can extend to support diverse populations.
Yeah, I can go ahead. I think the one thing that I'm most excited about is how it can break that language barrier. When you just think about really high quality learning resources that might just be, in German, and being able to translate that in real time and bring it into a classroom in Kansas City, and so I think that's really exciting, and that just opens up the doors and possibilities for like where we can go with it.
Yeah, I remember when you brought up translation in our pre-chat, and I think that's such an exciting area for me as well, and it's one that I think loses some of the attention because we're so focused on the chatbots. But I agree, I think translation's really exciting. I think for me, I'm very focused in math. I think it's a really difficult problem to solve, and so it's an area where all my attention really goes. And I think there's a couple different things that I'm hopeful of. I think the personalization that I talked about of really a comprehensive understanding of where the student's at. But more than that, I think personalization, to some of what Curtis has said, is more than pacing. It's what matters to the student. And I think the challenge with cultural responsiveness in some cases is that we have to make assumptions without AI. Not every Chinese student has made dumplings before. And so making that assumption in a math problem can still be alienating. But if we can learn more about what students care about, what they're interested in, not make assumptions, we can use that to inform the content that we give them. And to me, that's what personalization can really be powerful in, is helping students feel connected. Because when your prior knowledge informs what you're learning, it becomes so much harder to say, I'm not a math person, because your experiences are helping you learn math. And so that's what I'm really excited about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think a lot of schools that have been leveraging AI that I've seen even in Singapore, a lot of their schools look like accelerators now, like tech accelerators. So I thought it was exciting from the traditional model of schooling. But I think with AI removing all the gatekeepers, responsible AI specifically, a lot of kids like me, I grew up in a neighborhood that literally had one laptop in 2005, and it was mine. So we used to gather around it, break it apart, build it back. And I think with AI, we're able to have access to what my boy always calls stranded brilliance. So instead of marginalized communities playing catch up, we can actually be at the forefront of education. And so that's like my big promise with AI is if we're able to get this right, then there's possibilities of outcomes that are going to be exponential.
What I love about this opportunity is everybody in this room is literally at the cutting edge of education innovation. That's why you're here. We've identified that you are the best, the boldest, and the brightest. And together with product developers, you all can create the future that's equitable, that's accessible for everybody. So give yourselves a hand and give these great TikTok generation users a hand. All right.